Welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Channel. I'm Adam JD Martin, your host for today. And today we're going to be talking about mistakes that homeowners and investors made in 2023 and how not to make the same mistakes in 2024. Now, before we get started on this video, I just want to remind you that I'm going to be responding to the first 10 comments below. So drop your comments, give us your feedback. Let's start a discussion here so we can help our fellow Canadians invest in real estate. That's the point of the Canadian Real Estate Channel. Jumping right into the content here. I think one of the biggest mistakes that homeowners and investors, that's you, made in 2023 was failing to think about the negative impact of inflation. A lot of people were buying and riding high off of the sentiment that we experienced in 2021 and early 2022. Unfortunately, that sentiment stayed like a bad hangover into 2023, and people were primed to look at houses being valued a lot more than they should have been. Okay, these houses have been overvalued for the last couple of years, and we can see that simply by looking at the data that exists before 2021. Okay, before we got into all this crazy mania with COVID, the trends were pretty consistent. We saw maximum 4%, maybe 5% appreciation on your assets every year. None of this 20% in a year. So it's no surprise to me that we're down 20, 30% from where we were at all-time high prices during a global pandemic where we printed more money than we ever have. I think homeowners and investors made a huge mistake in not considering the effects that printing all that money was going to have. Of course, if you flood the monetary supply, you will absolutely drive a bunch of demand that is artificial. Now, when you pair printing a ton of money with giving a ton of money out for free, we start getting a crazy demand cycle that's completely unsustainable. And I think that buyers in 2023 are still suffering the hangover from that, but not really realizing why that they were suffering from that. And they're continuing to buy at prices that don't make sense. Another implication of this is that people failed to see that when we printed all that money and when all this money was given out for free, at the same time unemployment was high, that this would cause massive ripples in the housing market. And a lot of people still signed up for things like variable mortgages. Instead of locking in great rates in 2021, when rates were down at 1 to 2%, people are now being forced to refinance those variables, and there's a lot more that have to still refinance or renew their mortgages coming up. It's going to be an issue. So 2024 sees, in my opinion, even greater instability in the housing market because of how many mortgages are up for renewal in the next couple of years. I think it's going to make massive issues. I believe that our inflation is still too high from where it should be, and the effects of printing all that money, and we're still doing it today. There's a lot of issues going on around the world right now that are demanding a ton of capital, and Canada is not first in line, but they're damn close when it comes to giving out money internationally right now. That's going to cause issues with the monetary supply. That's going to cause issues when people go to refinance and their rates have tripled. The only solution for homeowners in that position now is to either extend their amortization to keep the same payment, causing them to be in debt forever, or refinance at higher rates and have a much larger payment. And this brings me to my next point, that a lot of people in 2023 failed to understand that costs increase much faster than your income. And you know this as an employee, okay? Try right now, try today. Walk into your boss's office and say, hey, costs have gone up 20%, I need a 20% raise. What do you think the chances are? Let me know in the comments if you think you could pull that off. I don't think you can. And I know because I'm my own damn boss and I can't afford a 20% raise. So the cost for your employer has raised, the costs for themselves personally, but also as a company have raised, and they've greatly outpaced the increase in revenue. So when your cost basis, things like your mortgage payment, your property taxes, your utility bills, all of those things increased very quickly. Also basic consumer basket goods too, like think about transportation costs. Fuel cost is way up. Groceries, way up. The availability even of vehicles for the last few years has been very scarce, and so the price of new vehicles has gone up. While with every new vehicle sold, there were financing terms. Those financing terms are also going to either need to be renewed or repaid, and they're going to be a lot more expensive as well. Generally speaking, people have been overspending for the last few years, and they failed to realize that those costs like utilities and mortgage costs and taxes can go up very quickly while your rental income or while your actual income as an employee stays pretty much the same. When it comes to rentals, we're governed with rent controls here in Ontario at 2% typically. So I think this year's 2.5%. Newsflash, guys, gas has gone up a lot more than that. Okay, your groceries are 20% more expensive now than they were 3 years ago. And that's the greatest increase in cost over 40 years. Okay, 40-year highs. Your rental income's not gonna go up that much unless you get turnovers, but where are your people gonna go? Everywhere they look, rents are going to be higher than where they're paying now, and you're governed by only raising those about 2%. If you fail to understand that moving forward, you are going to have the same challenges in 2024 that the people who purchased in 2021 to 2023 had. And that's something that we can avoid. Another strategy we need to really consider, and another issue that a lot of people had in 2023, was overlooking diversification strategies. The people in the last few years that had all their eggs in one basket got punished. People that were running exclusively short-term rentals, they're getting punished right now by regulations and by actually being shut down over the COVID period. Now they're being hit with things like an inability to expense some of their operating expenses just based on a whimsical change in the rules from the Canadian government. People who are running exclusively student rentals, well, they also got punished. We've seen increase in requirement for licensing for those types of things. We're seeing more regulation on the space, and we're also seeing a housing crisis, which is forcing a lot of people into wanting to turn to long-term rentals. During the COVID period as well, nobody went to school, right? They all stayed home. The emergence of things like Zoom and telecommunication strategies for education have been extremely prevalent. We're seeing a lot less people actually going to campuses. We're seeing a lot less people, for that matter, going to commercial spaces like offices. And that's a big deal. If you were invested all in, if you had all your chips on commercial real estate, well, it's probably not a great time when inflation's running rampant, unemployment's really high, and commercial space is getting beat up. That's a real big problem. So for 2024, I implore you, if you are going to be a diligent investor, what you need to do is think about the considerations of inflation as they continue to stay high, the consideration of failing to understand that costs greatly outpace your ability to increase your revenues. You need to be diversified. You need to have multiple exit strategies. You need to understand what to do if we continue to see high inflation, high rates, and low supply of housing. These are all strategies that are going to help you be better prepared for 2024 as a real estate investor. Now, if there's something you thought I overlooked on this video, or you want to add to the conversation, please drop us a comment below, and we're going to respond, again, like I said at the top of the video, to the first 10. If you get in there, let's start a great conversation, help out your fellow Canadian investors, and let's all make money together. After all, it's problems or profits.